Hi, this is Tim Horn for Breaking News, and today we have the second in a series of interviews we're having with a bunch of international young people, and it's been quite eye-opening so far. I think you're going to like this. I have with me today Jorge Galicia. Jorge is a young attorney. He's 23 years old, and he recently graduated from law school in Venezuela, and he is here to talk about Venezuela for us today. It's a lot in our news. It's going to be very, very interesting to see what he says. So let's get started. Jorge, welcome. Glad to have you here.
Thank you for the invitation.
It's such a pleasure. And I want to talk, I actually should probably thank the Project Arizona for helping arrange this today.
Absolutely.
So it's a really great experience I've had talking with Jorge and some of the other people that we're going to be interviewing in this series. So being from Venezuela, let's go right from the top. We see in our news every day battles in the street. We see that there's a leader, Maduro, that it seems like a lot of the people in the street, they want him out because the economy's collapsing, and it's typified here as being very bad and a lot of chaos. Is that accurate?
That's completely accurate. If you see the polls, the numbers in the polls, you will see that Maduro has like 80% of disapproval in the best scenario for him, because there are some worse number for him that claim he has 90% of disapproval and stuff like this. Mm-hmm. But this doesn't matter for him because he's not a Democrat. He doesn't believe in democracy. He's a dictator, and he wants to control the whole society, even though society doesn't want him.
So he's the successor to Chavez, right?
Yes, Hugo Chavez.
And Hugo, I remember he said, and it was in the news at one point, because I've noted that our Democratic Party in the United States is actually the Socialist Party of the United States. Absolutely. And I wrote a book called Ruling the Elite, and in that I talked about that, and I talked about Chavez actually saying on the news at one point in Venezuela, that that our president at the time, Barack Obama, was so far left that he felt that he and Castro had to move farther to the left to stay as far left or more far left than our president here in the United States. Now that sounds alarming. Did you ever hear that broadcast or about that happening?
To be honest, I didn't, but I know for a fact that under the presidency of Barack Obama, there was almost no pressure against Venezuelan government, even though when we knew for a fact that it was a dictatorship and it was abusive of human rights and everything. And it is until Trump arrived in power that now we're seeing America as a true ally of Venezuelan democracy. So it is not crazy to think that way. I mean, if you see all what Obama did in the past when he went to Cuba to have some pictures in Cuba,
and he opened up relations with Cuba
exactly,
that had been stopped for decades.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he did that.
Yes.
Now Cuba has a real tight relationship with Maduro.
Exactly, yeah. Cuba is all over the place in Venezuela. Cuba is controlling our military, all of our important decisions of government are made first by Cuba, and then Maduro is no more than a puppet for the Cuban regime.
So it's kind of like what I'm seeing is that the people who want freedom and democracy there, it's almost like a revolution against the real controller, which is Castro and his puppet.
Exactly.
Is that accurate?
That's totally accurate, yeah. And that's why it is important for us as Venezuelans receive some kind of help from U.S. and democratic governments around the world, because we are not alone there. I mean, it is not just Maduro and some Venezuelan guys. We have the Cuban government involved, we have the Russian government involved. Recently, a few days ago, 2 military aircraft from Russia arrived in Venezuela with almost 200 or 100 Russian soldiers. We have Iran being involved. We have the Chinese being involved. So it is not a fair play for us to do.
Right. So what you're saying, what you're saying is you have an authoritarian regime, Cuba,
Yes.
controlling your country through a puppet dictator,
Exactly.
and he's backed by Iran, another authoritarian country.
Yeah. Even North Korea recently opened some kind of an
North,
embassy in
North Korea,
Caracas,
another dictator,
Uh-huh.
another authoritarian regime.
Yeah.
So, that's just awful. Now, you're an educated man. Do you know what the Monroe Doctrine was?
Yeah, sure. American for Americans, right? Yeah.
That's it.
Uh-huh.
So, to refresh the memories of those who may not remember here, the Monroe Doctrine was established by our former president, who wanted to make sure that our hemisphere of America, of all the Americas, stayed that way, and America would see to it that it stayed that way. Unfortunately, when Barack Obama became president, he said we're not going to follow the Monroe Doctrine anymore. Now, had he not done that, we might be able to get more help to Venezuela right now. But that's not what's happening. As far as I'm concerned, it's not enough. And how many people live there?
Around 30 million, I think, was the last.
So those of you who think this is a small place, 30 million people live there.
Yeah.
And they're trying to become free again.
Well, 3 million people have already left the country because of the.
Yeah, gone to Colombia.
Yeah, to Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, even here in America, because there is no possibility for them to survive in Venezuela. And these people rather go by walking through all the South American continent to get to whatever place. People dies in the streets because they cannot stand the cold weather, so they die, and it is a really real tragedy what we're seeing right now in Venezuela because of the human.
Well, you're old enough that you would remember when Venezuela, which is one of the major oil producers in the world,
Yes.
was doing well. There was
Yes.
freedom, the economy was working right, and then what happened?
Well, to be honest, I have left almost my entire life under socialism. Chavez arrived into power in 1999, and I was born in 1995. But we have to remember that socialism is not like it's not like you push a button and then everything is destroyed. The first years were seen like, oh look, this thing is working. We have Chavez got plenty of money to distribute to anybody, but suddenly the money of other people's money, right, was gone, and now we had a lot of problems because all of this irresponsible fiscal irresponsibility, right? But yes, in my youth, I saw like a lot of this. The starting points of this chaos. It was kind of easy for us to see where we were heading and to imagine the next consequences that we were going to see. That it is nowadays, right? You see it, starving people in the street, eating garbage. No medicines for almost nobody.
It's dysfunctional.
Yeah.
The government's not working for the people. Well, let me ask you this, because here in America, we face an onslaught of socialism where people are starting to think, hey, maybe that's a good idea. I can see that you don't agree with that. But let me ask you this, because I think it's real important. Going back, your parents, you were 4 years old when Chavez came in, but there was a time leading up to it that your parents probably have talked to you about, or other people that you know, or around school when you were going through college, or even at lower grades. People must have talked about what it was like and how it came about. So how did socialism get its roots there in your nation?
Well, what I've heard, read in history books and everything is that we in Venezuela had this silly idea that we were like a really rich country. I mean, we were actually, but this created some kind of mindset in the population that, okay, if we're a rich country, therefore maybe we don't need to work anymore. We just need to extend our hand and expect some more redistribution. And that was like kind of a popular claim back in the days, right? People wanted more from government. Okay.
Sorry about that.
Don't worry.
I put on a timer.
Okay.
I'll just turn that off. Okay. So I know we're supposed to cut off, but I'm sure that we only have so much time for this segment. But I'm sure our viewers are looking at this going, hey, this is you've seen in your country what people are starting to show here. Hey, you know, that socialism doesn't look so bad.
Yeah.
There's extra money, everybody gets something, it'll work out great. But you did note a little while ago, but at some point you run out of other people's money.
Mm-hmm.
And then what do you do? So, and you've lived through that, and boy, I tell you, I hope that Venezuela gets back to democracy and freedom and joins the free nations once again.
Amen.
And gets away from the tyrants that want to control those 30 million people that they're just trying to ratchet down now and keep them under
And
power.
almost everybody wants that. We want Venezuela to be ally of America, of Israel, of the free nations of the world.
And so do we.
We will.
Thank you
You're
very
welcome.
much for coming, Jorge.
Okay, thank
it's
you so
great
much.
and great interview. Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation.